Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again of St. Lucia and those in the diaspora. Welcome to Moving Forward. We meet again by the grace of the One Most High. It is always a pleasure to speak with you. I've been told that many gather in London to hear what I have to say, even though it is in the later hours of the night. I'm grateful for their support and also choice. And to say thanks to Andy Hayward in London, Merle Flores, Ianthe Emmanuel in Brooklyn, Yume Maitre, and Al Gasper with his kind words, and many more I want to thank for their support. Tonight, I somewhat want to be philosophical and spiritual, therefore, to give me that feeling that I have. I also take the opportunity to send my thanks to those listening in other parts of New York and those in Canada. Yes, we are certainly being heard all over by the grace of the One Most High, because truth shall always reign supreme. It is without a doubt on the throne in this program or on this program. It's about truth, whether it has to do with the government or the opposition. What is right, what is wrong is wrong. I've always said, if I should be critical of this present government, it is not because I am wary of them, but because I care that they do things right, so that the opposition cannot use their propaganda, misinformation and disinformation. Even now, cyber machine or warfare, or their artificial intelligence ploy in position to put things in the wrong context, whereby they can sow the seeds of doubt in the population. We must be aware of that, because that is the only way they can survive. And the ploy is to turn the truth into a lie, or wait for one or two little slips by the government to jump on it. Why? Because they are not truly an opposition party, because they fail to understand what it entails. It is not only in St. Lucia I see or notice this weakness, but also in St. Vincent's opposition. Maybe, just maybe, it is a sickness that opposition parties in this part of the world suffer from. They are basically not objective, and because of that, they lead the weaker in our society astray. Well, having thanked those who support Moving Forward, I must now do something which I did not want to do, and that is to breathe fire. I find it hard to sit and listen, or to hear what one could term a barking dog, who, by the way, is the ex-Minister of Tourism, who is called Cocolorum, making derogatory and insulting remarks that should, in my view, land him in court. If what I was hearing was coming from him, in my view, this nasty little man, I should call him that now, had the audacity to make an alleged statement to the effect that people in politics can do well to make sure they support the police more so that the police gains their respect. The St. Lucia Labour Party administration look at who supported them at the last elections. They cannot bark because many of the perpetrators of crime are their supporters. This is simply horrendous. And therefore, I want to ask the ex-minister, who are those individuals or supporters who are perpetrators of crime within the Labour Party? Name names if you are making such a statement that is so derogatory, because it is without a doubt slanderous. And you can be sued by the Labour Party for making such accusations without foundation. You must remember, young man, that you are not in the House making such a statement with immunity. What it tells me is how desperate the opposition is when statements of that low level and despicable nature can be made in the public forum. I now simply ask the question, where is the Labour Party's PR? Does it exist? Because they should now be pursuing that matter in an urgent manner. There's no doubt that our education system has not been able to make even the politicians in our midst to think objectively. There is something that I want to remind the leader of the opposition, which I learned a long, long time ago, and that is, no matter how tall you are, If your mind does not work well, you are just a tall fool or imbecile. I also want to point out to him that discipline is at the heart of everything. Therefore, I say with a clear voice to the leader of the opposition and all who would listen in all sincerity, that regardless how rich you are, if you are not a disciplined individual, then you are a danger to yourself and society. I never thought, when I first met the leader of the opposition, that he was that type of individual. He turned out to be, but we live and learn. I also do see some individuals in our present government who are somewhat like him. Therefore, I have come to the realization and conclusion that it takes all types to make the world go round. My friends, I want to convey to you all that humility is the heart of great wealth. Therefore, try to embrace the gift of humility, because that is what we somehow lack in positions of power. Comrade, as the Prime Minister of this country, I am more than convinced that you are endowed with humility and integrity. That is why I support you to the fullest. Remember that, because if you lose that, then without a doubt you have no value. And lastly, do have respect for your fellow men and women. And you do it in my observation right now. Try passing that on to your team and ministers, and advise them not to see our people as jackasses, mendicants, or even barking dogs. I've tried to be humble all my life, yet I have taught at all levels, whether here or in England or in Taiwan, even to PhD students then. Therefore, God in his infinite wisdom have given me the ability to pass on the little knowledge that came my way. That was not only to my people, but peoples all over the world. I have also helped in that respect in Penang, Malaya, Singapore, Hong Kong, and elsewhere. Yes, the Almighty has been good to me. For some who may not know, I did not just spend a lot of time in academia, but spent 3.5 years, as I mentioned before, in the British Army, the Corps of Royal Signals. Then lived, or had years, 5 years in the British Air Force, and a further 2.25 years in the Special Constabulary of Great Britain. God, without a doubt, is my guiding light and has guided my path, because I believe in him totally, whether in good times or in bad times. I also do hope you make him yours, Prime Minister, not in a false manner, but in a genuine one. I've also spent a little time as a High Court mediator, as I have a master's in that subject which deals with conflict resolution, mediation, and above all, arbitration. And also, I did the 40 hours required to be a High Court mediator. I'm therefore eternally grateful and fortunate for this great opportunity to help in bringing people out into the light, more so those who were in darkness for some time. It is at this juncture I want to remind the labor hierarchy what Albert Einstein once said, that time is an illusion. Therefore, I said to them that the dreaming must now become a reality. We now have to combine hands in symbolizing our desires, our feelings, our hopes, even our dreams for the people, and not for some, but for all the people, as the last government did not do with the Fortuna Doctrine. So tonight, brothers, my brothers and sisters, I want to illustrate my hopes and dreams for St. Lucia and its society under the leadership of Philip J. Pierre, but to illustrate that home to him with the needle and thread theory that is used to mend clothes or whatever, or many other items, more so to make them anew and to look good. Therefore, I said to him, if you sew properly and neatly, then whatever it is will have a long life. Therefore, Comrade Prime Minister, sew neatly as best as you can, clearly and effectively and efficiently. In saying this, I like to express my hopes and dreams for this country, whether in the literary sense, the sociological, the psychological, the philosophical, political, economical, spiritual, and educational. Most of all, I believe sincerely that if we can love each other as the Master taught us, then we can achieve so much, because the One Most High is with us and guiding the path for our salvation. Remember that he did not differentiate whether red, yellow, or green, black or white, or any other race, because he sees us all as human beings that he sent out into the world. If we can live truly as brothers and sisters in his name, then we will without a doubt come out of the dark and into the bright sunlight and beyond. I bring this to the fore because tonight I can say quite categorically to the government that they have now passed the halfway stage of their term in office, which is an important timeline to ponder on as to what has been achieved and the plans for the future. Therefore, the 2024-25 budget must be meaningful in bringing to light the future for growth, employment, medically, educationally, and most importantly, the development of the infrastructure that is important for the country to move forward in the last area I mentioned. There is so much to do, and one hopes that now, with a new permanent secretary, she'll be the one that can take the bull by the horn in order to take the ministry from the slumber it was alleged to be under the last permanent secretary. I therefore pray and hope that she can spur him on, that is the minister, on with good advice, etc. If they can gel together, and she can help to take the ministry into a new dawn, where jobs are created in building the infrastructure, the roads and things of that sort, that has been slightly neglected, especially under the last government, then a bright future awaits them. The country needs this in order to progress. Therefore, the 2024-25 budget must find the resources necessary for that ministry to develop and therefore bring new light to the country as a whole. Oh, my people, I once again say quite categorically that in my view, there are so many poor people in the valley, with some children being born every day with clouds of inferiority floating in their little mist eyes, because they think that they are nobody. Somebody has to give them hope, and the present Prime Minister has to be that hope. Brothers and sisters, I do beg you to open up your hearts and minds in helping them to achieve their hopes and dreams. We can do so if we really care and give our support to the present government. Tonight, as always, moving forward, we'll start with the home front, and then we will close with Taiwan and China issue that to some may bring about a third world war. It's at this juncture I will take my first break, and I'll be back. Interesting tonight. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about China and the Third World War and Taiwan. And I must say that Taiwan is very important to us all. As the question being asked as to whether the Taiwan situation can get out of hand with a Chinese leader who is convinced that he is an emperor. There's no doubt in my mind that the present leader of the PRC, Xi Jinping, is an autocratic, authoritarian, and callous leader to an extent. I even go further to say that he's without a doubt one that could be termed a sociopath and psychopath. This is now becoming visible because of the amount of suffering that he has caused in his country to the poor and helpless, and even around the world with the Belt and Road Initiative that is simply failing. However, the cost to many countries have been astronomical, to the extent that they have sunk to the lowest in terms of debt to their country. Pakistan is one. Sri Lanka is another. Kenya, Ecuador, even Nicaragua. The Philippines nearly did under Duarte. But the people of China are somewhat beginning to rise up, and demonstrations are taking place, which was unheard of since the Tiananmen Square massacre. The people have now come to the conclusion that they have nothing to look forward to. Unemployment is rising astronomically and the economy is nearing collapse. That is China's. The growth rate is either in the minus or not more than 1.5%, to the extent that China may already be in recession as far as the pundits are concerned. But China is desperately trying to tell the world that their growth rate for 2023 was 5.2%. I do believe that as the Lunar New Year approaches, we will see for the first time growing animosity towards the government, and that will be more obvious after the 10th of February or before. Therefore, because of the callousness of the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, it may very well lead us into a third world war because of the floundering economic situation in China. At present, he may well decide to go into war in the hope to secure his position as leader because of the dire situation that the country in some areas are asking for his ouster, for him to get out. Therefore, we have to be looking at how the situation unfolds. However, before continuing, let us take this opportunity to say a prayer before carrying on. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. O Father in heaven, we come to you in all humility to beg you to give Comrade Philip, the Prime Minister, the health and strength he needs as he sits to put the 2024-25 budget. He, no doubt, is an individual who may not be seen often in his constituency because he's working extremely hard in making sure that financially St. Lucia has the financial resources that needs to make the country a success in the future. And I'm talking about his aide, that is the Prime Minister. And that is the representative of Ancillary. He's very important to this country's future. So I ask him and his constituency to be patient with him because he's about the world and he has to travel out to get what we need. He's working for the Prime Minister who depends on him very much. Philip, the Prime Minister, is working so hard to bring St. Lucia out of the darkness and into the light, which we are beginning to see. There is hope, fairness and justice under Philip Joseph Pierre. I believe that he is, at present, our only hope of being a country that has an opportunity to develop into one that will be the envy of the Caribbean as a whole, which we were at one time. I have trust and faith in him because I seriously believe that he is here today because God has sent him to us, because others did not fit in that leadership process for this country. God does bless him because he knows Philip to the extent that he has blessed him. Because he is without a doubt a child of God. The Holy Spirit lives in him because he is the Prince of Peace and the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Amen. Tonight I quote from Solomon chapter 1 verses 1 to 5. Love, justice. Your rulers of the world, set your mind sincerely on the Lord and look for him with all honesty. Those who do not try to test him will find him. He will show himself to those who trust him. Dishonest thoughts separate people from God. And if we are foolish enough to test his power, he will put us to shame. Wisdom will never be at home with anyone who is deceitful or slave of sin. Everyone who is holy has learned to stay away from deceitful people. We have them in St. Lucia. He will not stay around when foolish thoughts are being expressed. He will not feel comfortable when injustice is being done. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Before I begin in earnest and to go further, I want to ask the leader of the opposition, in all sincerity, when is he going to account for the country's $7.3 million that he, as the Prime Minister, was literally prepared to leave our finances bare to pay for vaccines we did not need. Further to that, to pay for those vaccines from someone or firm that had never dealt in such a deal. Barbados was wary of this deal and never put any money until the vaccine were produced, as they said. But this country, it was alleged, went out of their way to even violate the rules that applied in cases like these to achieve that payment. I believe that the country has a right to be given back their monies with interest. We are told that 2 million have been given back, but as I have said many times before, that is a form of interest, as far as I'm concerned. What amazes me, and it's clear to see, as far as planning is concerned, that the government of Philip J. Appiah is always concerned about planning, which was never the policy of the last government. Therefore, it is commendable that he insists on proper planning so that the country's money is not wasted, as we saw with the last one. What comes to the fore is that with the last government was that the planning process was sometimes done overnight. Many of the projects they were involved in seem to have always gone wrong because they were not working according to a meaningful plan. We witnessed that without a doubt on the road expansion program up north. We saw this with the St. Jude Hospital, the airport construction project, that the list goes on. What is now clearly visible and seems to be on everyone's lips is the state of the road. Even my friends in London have complained to me in that respect. However, it is easy to believe that until I decided to study and examine why one road deteriorated as it has not long after the election, and that road is the road to Tapion Hospital and School. Many will recall that it was done just before the election, and it was a pleasure to drive on. However, it is crumbling very fast because the patchwork was poorly done and mediocre. Not only that, the material used was very cheap, and therefore, regardless what, it would not last long, but the past government were convinced that they would win. Therefore, they would not have to justify the cheapness of the work. These are my thoughts. I want to remind you, the listeners, of what C.S. Lewis had to say. And it's quite succinct because it affects all of us in this country. And that is, one of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to facts. Therefore, I ask the question I ask is why? What we are seeing at present is clear that those who are throwing the stones at this government are doing so because they refuse to accept the facts that their government was an abysmal failure in office and therefore must never run this country again with the leaders that they still have. In my view, they were a pathetic group of individuals. Philip, on coming into office, and with the help of the Holy Spirit, makes it clear. When he says, "Behold, I am all things now. The former things are passed away." And that is why we hear him making it clear that he will not accept any corruption in his team. However, I would like to say to the Prime Minister quite succinctly, a thief is a thief. There's no doubt that any form of corruption continues to be pervasive and pernicious, more so in small countries like ours. Why so? Some would say. My answer is simply that growth is stunted because of corruption. When it is in governance of a small country like ours, in looking back to the last government, I would say without flinching an eyelid that we were poor because we were poorly and governed. And these poor leaders we chose, they chose the path, and in a sense, we are to blame because we chose that path when we elected them. What seems to be endemic is this in this country is our capacity to canonize thieves and sanctify and celebrate the wrong people, while we vilify good men and women who are prepared to do things the right way. Therefore, I'm prepared to call a thief, regardless of their status in the country. There's no doubt about it that we punish the small thieves. And in many cases, as Professor Lumumba have said, that we elect the big ones into public office. It must be made clear that he was not talking about all politicians. It must be said that, to an extent, some do come into office with good intentions, but the position and the power simply corrupts many of them, most of their minds. He went on to say quite succinctly too, that we must succeed in the fight against corruption because corruption is almost above sea level, which brought a smile to my face. It is therefore most important that leaders demonstrate and mean what they say about corruption. As we have heard, our Prime Minister made that clear. In essence, we have to hold him to that promise. Many in this country speak, even leaders, about corruption, but they do nothing to eradicate it, or at least bring it down to a level that can be contained. There's no doubt that the culture of corruption must be eradicated in government, and one of the first things that must be done is that we have to stop celebrating ill-gotten wealth. Many just speak about it and do nothing in helping its eradication. When I look back, the professor was clear in his address when he said that those who occupy political leadership will invariably say they will fight corruption. But in my view, these are mere words because it sounds like a determined leader. But in many cases, they simply fail to deliver. Philip, without a doubt, is doing his best to salvage our country from what was and where it was heading, which was clearly into the abyss. He is without a doubt showing a form of committed leadership that did not exist before. However, it is important to note that corruption is a serious business and simply cannot be left to politicians. It is all in our hands, and therefore a collaboration of effort is necessary if we are serious in eradicating the corruption we hear so much about. So at this juncture, I'll take my next break and I'll be back interested. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about corruption and things of that sort. But I must say that when I look back at the weakness of the last government, more so the leader, I felt somewhat betrayed. He simply did not adhere to the ways of governing. And it is now obvious that he failed to have embedded into his straw mind and brains that an action plan is critical for planning purposes. It should have objectives, targets, and a time scale that would allow those concerns to structure their support for the plan. We must not forget that as Minister of Tourism, this individual concocted a plan to attract people coming to invest. And that plan lay in something which he termed boxing in paradise. I hope you all have not forgotten that, which cost the state a lot of money and simply produced nothing in return. As PM, he had another plan with his Chinese friend when they concocted the DSH project, which was abysmal, an abysmal failure. Did they not plan to build all those little islands around Vieux Fort, as was alleged? Yet the same individual who virtually threw $7.3 million of the country's money, as I've mentioned before, and will continue to mention, to buy vaccines that were simply never received. The country needs an answer to this alleged form of corruption. This is the same leader of the opposition who now wants us to believe that he can bring prosperity to this island of ours. This is sheer poppycock and pie in the sky. At present, we are slowly getting back to some form of economic security under Philip J. Pierre. I therefore say this to anyone in this country who would want to bring back the likes of the leader of the opposition to this country, more so his cronies and poodles, as his lapdogs, then they need to get their heads examined because they simply belong to a nut house. It is clear that I am not mincing my words in that respect. What amazes me is that we are seeing the same ludicrous examples of this in the United States of America. But it simply won't happen because St. Lucia is growing. GDP is looking good. Unemployment is going down to an extent. And all this is happening in this smaller island of ours under Philip J. Pierre. We must never forget that he took over a country that was simply broke or did not have money. Remember, these are not my words. I'm not the one who is saying it. It came out of the mouth of the ex-prime minister. As I mentioned before, the last government simply knew nothing about planning, and those around them who know were simply ignored because they saw them as feeble and too straightforward. A good strategic plan should give all involved the opportunity to see how to support individual elements of the action plan that best suit their purposes. I can look back and think about strategic planning. That's so important, even in advertising and things like this. Having an action plan document is ideal and should be the basis for a whole range of assistance program for the future or in the future. That is what the present PM is doing. And many, even the opposition, seem to want miracles, but fail to realize that the country was broke, as the last Prime Minister said to the world. Therefore, planning was essential if we are to get out of that country's broke scenario. It seems as if the last government was not familiar with the planning process because projects were done on the spur of the moment to service their family or friends. Therefore, I hope that we will never in our lives forget the Fortuna Doctrine, that we must remind our children of this piece of political history in St. Lucia. Also, to inform them that the Prime Minister of the day supported that doctrine to the hilt. There was no compassion for the poor in those constituencies who they thought are Labour Party supporters. Therefore, in this program of moving forward, I look to their appropriation, in which I say, in a truthful manner, what in theory I'm doing on this program is not to castigate anyone or any party, but to speak the truth, because the truth is forever on the throne. I therefore appeal to the sensible human beings that can sympathize with others through the exercise of their imagination in what I put forward. Yes, with some gusto. What I point out is also for the ruling party, because I want them to be the rock of stability, the rock upon which the passions of humanity, of sentiment, justice, and compassion will be built. St. Lucia must rediscover itself because it was one where we had simply gone mad, or at least one that had lost any sense of reason and balance. As always, it is at this juncture I want to remind the government that the special prosecutor must now work with a passion and have the staff around him that can move with some gusto and haste in bringing to justice any alleged form of corruption that took place under the last government. I believe firmly that laws exist in order to quell the passions of men and women who will not conform to the dictates of reason and justice without constraints. At this juncture, I want to remind St. Lucians of what the Aristotelian idea of good society is all about. He was of the view, that's Aristotle, by being concise and precise, that the art of government lay in arousing the popular sentiment so that citizens sympathize with those that seek to lead them, admire their happy situation, enter into with pleasure and endeavor to promote. These words are fundamental because it never mentioned to enrich oneself or to fill one's pockets to the fullest or to make yourself rich at the expense of the people, more so the poor and absolute poor of our country. What we did not see under the last government is what is termed humanity, which Rousseau concluded has become distant from its natural sentiments. In particular, it has become detached from the first virtue, which universal virtue of compassion. When we saw what we saw under the last government, which I termed the United Records of the Poor, under Alan Guy, Nancy, etc., was inequality and downright suffering. As I'll repeat again, and now I compare the Prime Minister's constituencies, that's where they hit with the Fortuna Doctrine. And the transformation now from what it was is unbelievable under Philip J. Pierre. This is the same in nearly all the constituencies, whether Labour or otherwise, that they didn't like. That is what the government of the people is all about. Now you're seeing this everywhere, whether they're United Workers' Party supporters or whatever. Philip is in his humble endeavor, has thought of all the people, not just some of the people. It brought my mind back to my school days, when I first heard the saying that man is born free, and he is everywhere in chains. I therefore agree sincerely with Rousseau, because what we saw then under the last government, the renouncing of freedom, and this is clearly the renouncing of one's humanity, one's right as a man or woman, with an equality to one's duties. Under the last Prime Minister, we saw a debasement of human nature. In essence, human beings, especially when he was bold enough to call 43% of them mendicants, others as barking dogs and jackasses, even to the extent he said, let them brave. This we must never allow any one of you to forget. And I will keep reminding him of this until he leaves our politics. Because in the layman's term, he was debasing certain individuals of this country. This proves to me that he had a shallow mind that needs to be protected from. Don't forget once again that he said quite categorically that he was not a product of St. Lucia, but one of Canada. Yet, you want to be the Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Even having said all of this, I still want to tell him on this program that I'm sorry to hear that his father is not well. Let us all hope and pray that he recovers quickly, because to me, he's still a friend. I say this in all sincerity. So tonight, I want to say quite categorically that I have a deep belief in the persons, or the person we call Philip J. Pierre, because he's without a doubt the man of the time in the leadership of the country. Unbeknown to him, I've always voted for him because I'm registered as in Antwerp, where my mother's home is. At one time, because of my tiff with the leader of his party, then I switched to UWP during King's premiership, but still voted for him, always, because his representation was one of the best in all those years, which amounted to over 26 years of service to the community. His humility and care for the people was undeniable to anyone who is honest. Some see him as weak because of that humility, but he gets things done. He does not shout and make threats, but he can be tough, I tell you this. Many make the statements about as above because they like to look for the easy way out, to diminish the individual who is difficult, to castigate such as Philip. They do all they can just to face the truth and the facts before them. Well, I say to them, my fitting tribute to a man who dares to imagine that the interests of humanity lay in the politics of genuine democracy and the philosophy of universal love. This was clear that in coming to office, many thought he would get his broom out to sweep the public service clean of those who aided and abetted the last government. This he did not do, which did upset many of his supporters to this day. But he stood firm because he realized that he represented the whole of St. Lucia, and not just those who voted for him and his party. What Philip has shown is that political interaction binds a community because it binds the hearts of the citizens. It is when people become like one, enjoying the same spirit of democracy and self-government, that they show themselves reciprocally more compassionate, genuine, and free democracy reflects the very nature of the human heart. I say to those in power that any country in the world that allows youngsters to die each week from malnutrition and easily preventable illnesses, or simply don't have the medical facilities for the young generation, cannot be a just one. At present, we know 3 have died of this in this country of COVID. We have seen that somewhat in this country, and that is what Philip is concerned about, and one he would not want to see under his stewardship. What is needed at present is a more efficient and equitable St. Lucian economy. However, it is essential to achieve this, that the country has to overcome confrontation and to foster a climate of genuine cooperation and solidarity. I therefore say this to those in the opposition who continue to want to stir up strife in the country so as to deflate the confidence of the people and the good that this government is doing to bring the country back from the morass of despair that it was in to a solid foundation of peace and tranquility. Therefore, I have a dream that under Philip, we will witness that everyone will be getting a piece of the pie, but it will not happen overnight. More so when nincompoops and reprobates of the last government continue to spout their tripe in order to poison the minds of the people or the mendicants. They feel that they can brainwash with their tripe. I'll take my next break at this juncture. Welcome back to Moving Forward. And I was talking about those who brainwash us with their tripe. I want to say here without let or hindrance that I support Philip and 1 or 2 of the government 100%. And it is because of my support for him and for a few others that I will take my time to help the others where I can. But I say sincerely that they must listen and stop inflating their heads. And some of it is now exploding. I therefore say to them to be humble and be prepared to serve the people. I sometimes wish that I had this opportunity because it is not the development of oneself, but the development of the country for those to come. We, the older ones, have that duty to them. Much of my attitudes about start at home with the parents. It was a critical precondition for the emergence of who I am. And therefore, it should be so for many of us. Why? Because it is polity that could inspire trust, a reasonable prospect of providing humane governance for the democratically constituted civil society that we have, that we should become also. In now closing on the home front, I want to end with a few words from Galbraith, who focuses on the critical alignment of democracy and humanity. And this, I say clearly, real democracy is quite categorically that let us be a coalition of the concerns and the compassionate, and those who outside the political system, and for the good society, there would be a bright and wholly practical prospect. The affluent would still be affluent, the comfortable still comfortable, but the poor would be of the political system. Their needs would be heard, as would the other goals of the good society. Aspirant for public office would listen. The votes would be there and would be pursued. As now with the safety net, health care, the environment, and especially the law or power, the good society fails. I want to say to the government and the people of St. Lucia that Taiwan is reaching out to us on many different fronts, such as medical help, agriculture, policing, technology, helping our constituencies financially. And therefore it is important that we too reach out to them in every way possible. We must without a doubt strengthen our Taiwan ties, and this is our opportunity to do so. Our government, in my view, must commit to strengthen bilateral relations. It includes supporting the variety of undertakings, such as the annual training program involving high-ranking members of our police services, which is staged in Taiwan by the Ministry of National Defense. There are other examples, such as joint initiatives, such as going back to Taiwan's help in orchid producing, even the idea of sugar in our country. There must also be mechanisms for ministerial dialogue on economic affairs and mutual assistance agreement. It should also be on customs and a memorandum of understanding on science and technology cooperation. The world could be St. Lucia's oysters if we are determined to work and support Taiwan fully. I'm very interested to know if Xi Jinping is sufficiently knowledgeable about Taiwan's history when he mentions that China and Taiwan are one family, etc. Does he really know the origins of Taiwan? Is he aware of the Austronesian origin of Taiwan's original inhabitants? Therefore, in my opinion, nowhere is effort now more prevalent and urgently required to the preserving of the languages and cultures of the Taiwanese indigenous peoples. The government, in my estimation, must be forceful in our education or their education so that the world will know that there are 16 different tribes right now, and their languages are at present recognized by the government. History tells us that there was 21 tribes altogether. Then some scholars like myself believe that Taiwan is the likely source for the Austronesian languages around the world, given that 9 out of the 10 languages that families are found in the country. This has given rise to the hypothesis that Austronesian peoples originally settled in Taiwan before migrating outward to Southeast Asia and Oceania, including Easter Island in the east and Madagascar in the west. At present, the entire settlement in northern Taiwan's Maoli County and to the Teo people on Orchid Island is the southern or in the southeastern part of the country, which is Taichung. What is at present being done at institutions such as fields of anthropology and archaeology, which I did at the Institute of Industrial Relations of Chengyi University, it also included botany, geography, history, law, linguistics, literature, and sociology. The Sadic and Amis languages are now being preserved and passed on because of new technology, Taiwan's post-democratization embraces of the liberal, pluralistic values as part and parcel of their culture. And the way and life thereby come into the realization that they have to restore and elevate the country's linguistic heritage, which was entirely forbidden under Chiang Kai-shek. Taiwan in 1949, after he was beaten by the CCP in the civil war that took place, he was ruthless with the Taiwanese people and forbid them to speak any other language than Mandarin, not even Holo, which was the main Taiwanese language. I want therefore to ask the dogmatic and arrogant leader of the PRC whether he was aware of the real culture of the Taiwanese people when he makes statements that they are unreal and lack substance and truth. Therefore, when Xi Jinping tells President Marcos of the Philippines because he congratulated Lai on winning the Taiwanese election to do some reading in a cantankerous manner, then he also should. It is almost like the kettle calling the coal pot black. There's so much more I would like to unleash on the listeners about our diplomatic friend and his history, even going back to the archaeological age. But rest assured, I will do so bit by bit, so that you are familiar with who our friends are and what they are truly about. As I mentioned before, what we are seeing from China is a form of desperation, where blatant money diplomacy is being paid, not only to leaders of some countries to break diplomatic relations with Taiwan, as has been alleged, but to an extent, they're reporters of those countries to spread misinformation and disinformation, which acts on countries' population through their artificial intelligence charade. Therefore, people of St. Lucia, whether here or in the diaspora, we must open our eyes to what is fed to us. It is vitally important to really know a little history of our friends, because it is essential that you know, while the leader of the PRC seems at a loss in what he actually knows and says, as he is not truly accurate, I should say, with the facts on Taiwan, nor is he one to be truthful in what he communicates. Once again, as I conclude, because time is not on our side, I want to take this opportunity once again to say quite categorically that I have tried to be honest in all what I have said tonight, as usual, because truth is forever on the throne. And as always, life, we have to confront the truth and be aware of what we are told at times, because politics have become a dirty business. And we are seeing how the opposition is using all modes of dishonest and cunning to brainwash the 43% mendicants, as you were called by the leader of the opposition. You also have to be careful, because they now are trying a new form of dishonestly passing false information to you, and that is through artificial intelligence, what we term AI. I implore you to investigate everything that is being said to you, whether by the opposition or even the government of the day, because regardless how unpleasant and inconvenient the news is, there should be some honesty in reporting it. I believe sincerely that we have to expose those who try to mislead us by spreading false news, thereby causing alarm and despondency to suit their cause. Our aim is always to create a better quality of life, not only for ourselves, but for those to come, our children and their children. I therefore say to you, my brothers and sisters, to be honest with yourself first and with others. God is good, God is merciful, and he's without a doubt all-powerful. Blessed is his name. Therefore I say to you, to go in peace tonight, to serve and obey him. Blessed love to you all. And to never forget that you were born in God's image and likeness. And without a doubt, the majority of us were born black and should be proud of that, because we were made in his own image and likeness. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they shall see God. Never forget that. I'm thanking him by saying these words, that I am black and I'm proud. Go in peace, my brothers and sisters, to serve him always. Take care. God bless you all. Blessed love. good night, and good night.